Hey people, so I'm on my way to my class after wrestling with a guitar that I wished I'd returned. So it prompted the question for today's video: when should you return a guitar? Kind of delves into information that we've been dealing with on and off for 4 years on this channel. But I'm not sure if I've ever posed the question that directly. Got some Bach on right now. Well, it depends on who you are, really. If you are a beginner player, you're gonna return anything that's defective at all, where the guitar doesn't play. So you're gonna return a higher percentage. If you're a hobbyist and you can do some work, there may be some things you can straighten out, particularly setup stuff. If you're a non-professional, serious dabbler, modder, you're going to be able to fix even more stuff, and you're going to have a better eye and more experience with dialing things in. And if you're a professional luthier, which there are one or two of you that watch this channel, you're going to be able to fix a high percentage of stuff, but depending on what you paid for the guitar, you still may want to return it if it's no longer going to be worth what you spent. So even people like us have a threshold that can be met, and we just throw the guitar back in the box and ship it back. Not necessarily because we can't fix it or work on it, because it becomes, the problem eclipses the worth of the guitar, and it's no longer worth it to try and fix it. So what are the things you can fix pretty quickly? Well, we've talked about a lot of them on this channel. Dealing with ephemerals on a guitar that are very easy to switch out, like your tuners, your nut, your saddle. Most of you can learn enough setup skill to be able to deal with those smaller parts of the guitar. Even tuners, yeah. I mean, if you can handle a screwdriver and you buy a set of tuners that fit, I'd say almost everyone can switch out a set of tuners. It's really not that difficult. Where it becomes difficult, if you're trying to put a completely different set on your guitar and you have to plug holes and re-tap holes and stuff like that, then it gets a little techy. Some of you may or may not be comfortable with switching out electronic parts. I would say that the majority, if you've got a bad switch, a pickup that's not connected, a short somewhere in your wiring, you're going to box it up and ship it back. But there are some of you that are handy with wiring diagrams and a soldering iron. And you can do that sort of stuff. A lot of you are probably better than I am at that sort of stuff. I'd much rather work on the wood than the electronics, because it comes more natural to me. Probably because I worked with acoustic instruments for so long before really messing with electric guitars and basses as well. A lot of you can do rudimentary fretwork. So if you have a high fret, or a couple of high frets, or a section of the guitar that is uneven, you can spot level. A lot of people can do that. However, some of you are just going to ship that back too. It's not worth your time. If you don't have the confidence, don't do it. But most of you know to get something sort of like a fret rocker and check the frets and see if you have something high. And then some of you may be able to level and recrown. A lot of you won't be able to do that. A lot of you won't want to do that, because that is a skill set and requires, a modicum of decent tools to be able to do. So that's sort of hitting the limit for some of you. What I would say is the main reason to return a guitar is, let's say you get a guitar And the first thing you do is check the relief. You put the correct amount of relief in it, and you set up your playing action at the saddle end and the nut end, so that both ends of the guitar are sorted. You don't have any high frets, and you've cleared those hurdles, and you've still got mysterious buzzing or issues with tonality. Something's blocking the flow of the sound of the strings, and you realize that your neck is warped in some way, whether it be side to side, which is a real problem, or if it's warped to the point where the truss rod won't correct it, or won't correct it satisfactorily. Maybe you've got a kink somewhere along the line of the truss rod. Maybe you've got a hump where the body joins the neck, and you don't have the skill or desire to try and dress that out by lowering those frets, or doing a leveling of the top part of the guitar. I'd say that meets the threshold for most people, and even myself. If I pay $200 for a guitar that I can sell for $250 or $300, and it has neck warpage, it's no longer worth the $200 I paid. And the job, if it can be fixed, you're now getting into wood bending and stuff like that. It's no longer worth the money I paid. Or let's say I bought a guitar. Let's say I bought a Yamaha FG800, which sell for about $225 online. You might be able to sell a used one for $200, $150. Let's say I paid $100 for it. If I could set it up, it's probably worth it to get it playing well and then sell it for that $150, $180 or whatever you can get for it. But if it has a warped neck, if it has a cracked top, if it has a cracked or dented side, like a hole in the wood, it's no longer worth that $100 you paid for it, because even if you can fix it, no one's going to pay 60, 70% of the new price for something that has a big top crack, or a crunch in the side or in the back or something like that. I mean, the value of a guitar is less than a half once it has serious body damage. It's the same with electric guitars as well. If you've got a chip out of the headstock or a nasty crunch on the guitar somewhere, it's no longer worth the market price that you would get for just a used version of that guitar in good condition. It's got serious damage. It's got some heavy wear on it. It's in a state of disrepair. So you have to change your pricing scale, and now what you paid for it might be too much. And even a top luthier who can fix it is going to at least call the manufacturer and say, hey, I paid $100 for this cracked guitar. I'm returning it unless you send me $50 back. I'll keep it for $50 and then glue the top and sell it to some kid for $100. Even then, that's really crappy margins for that kind of work. So it's not a case of only returning things that you can't fix. It's a case of values and the worth of your time to fix something, and what that thing will now be worth once it's fixed. So I return quite a lot of guitars, more than you'd think. Probably not as much as the average person, because I'd say most issues when I get guitars, and even when I buy them as seconds and fixer-uppers, it's usually some setup issue that you can dial in fairly easily, that then allows you to correct the guitar and sell it for what you originally intended to sell it for. But if it has some serious compromise to the structural integrity of the guitar, either or neck warpage, humpage, twisted, mangled, neck profile, or a truss rod that doesn't work and you can't correct it, or that's stripped, or some sort of bashed in, cracked top, something that's crunched or had a bite out of it in shipping or something like that. Now your worth is compromised, and it's probably going to retrieve out the money out the guitar that you put in, even at the reduced rate. So that's something that you have to bear in mind. I often see Amazon reviews that baffle me. Somebody buys a guitar, they're upset because it's broken, and they say something like, "Yeah, I just threw it in the trash." And I'm thinking to myself, Amazon returns are so simple, why didn't you just return it, get another one, or get your money back? And then it dawns on me that those people probably bought one used and there is no return policy, and they're posting a review and taking it out on the manufacturer on Amazon, which is disingenuous. I see that quite often. But for those of you who are buying new guitars, there's no such thing as no returns. If you make enough noise, they have to take it back. If you buy a new guitar with retail conditions, that is. Alright, if you buy a guitar from someone on Craigslist, there is no return. Alright, you can't return a guitar that you bought on a used market from a private seller. It's buyer beware, sight unseen. You see, you buy. Same with Craig's Facebook Marketplace and all those sites. If you buy something used, it's a different ball game. But if you buy something new, whether it's Amazon, Sweetwater, Musician's Friend, Guitar Center, any of those places, any of those big box online stores, and there's something wrong with the guitar, i.e. it's not in the condition stated in the ad, you can return it within a reasonable amount of time. You can't return it 3 years later, as some people try to do on eBay, but you can return it within a couple of weeks of buying it in most cases. Even if people say they have no return policy, like some people try to do on eBay, it doesn't matter. If you kick up a fuss, eBay's going to side on the side of the seller. So there's really no excuse to keep something that is no longer worth what you paid, or is beyond your level of repair, or beyond your desire to pay for to have fixed. Yes, you can take it to your guitar shop in your luthier, and yes, they might be able to fix it for you, but they're not going to do it for free. I'd say that most guitar shops these days charge anywhere between $60 and $120 for a basic setup. So if you buy something on Amazon, you're not happy with it, you take it to your guitar shop to have them set it up for you, chances are they could do that, but then you've just added $60 to $100 to the price that you paid for that guitar. Now, it still might be worth it, because you often get good deals on Amazon with their pricing structure, and even with that added setup cost, you still may have a guitar that was worth what you paid. That's kind of the way I function. I sort of factor in that I'm going to have to do a setup on everything that I buy, and I factor that into the cost, and in a lot of cases it's still worth it. But in some cases it isn't anymore. And of course, the cheaper you go, the finer those margins are. So if you buy, let's say, a Glary guitar for $80, if it plays, it's a good deal. If you've got to take it to a shop and put in another $60, and that puts that guitar price up to $140, it's no longer worth it. You can get a better guitar for $140. You can. Therefore, it's probably better for you to return that guitar and to pay someone to fix it. But let's say you've got one of the new Yamaha Reverb Store guitars on a special discount introductory offer. Let's say it's normally $5.99 and you get it on sale for $3.99. You putting $60 into that guitar still makes it a viable purchase and a reasonable deal. So it may well be worth getting that guitar set up. I feel that way about all the Blue Ridge guitars that I've bought. I've bought them at really nice discounts. If I have to plow $100 into them, they're still great deals. And I've kept, I think, every one of them. I think one had a strip truss rod I sent back, but all the others, I dealt with whatever issues they might have had. They usually didn't have any. So it really depends on the worth of the guitar, what you paid, and the margin between those two figures. You have to decide whether it's worth the hassle or the extra cost. Now, rule of thumb, I would say, if you get anything with a warped neck, send it back. Send it back. Whether it's a $100 guitar, which in which case, do it. Trust me, it's not worth spending hours and hours and hours and hours trying to correct a warped Glary or Ashthorpe guitar or something like that. But even if it's like a Yamaha G800 or a Court Earth guitar, you can send it back and get another one that's probably perfect. Why keep the one that's warped? That's going to not only take you a lot of expertise to try and fix, but it may not work. Wood has a sort of muscle memory. You might be able to straighten that neck, but it might eventually, return to the proportions that you straightened it from. So I would say rule of thumb, if you've got anything that's warped, where the dimensions of the guitar are altered by the wood or something about the way the guitar is made, doing something silly, and throwing everything out of whack, I'd say I would advise even people who can work on them just to return them and get a different one. Now, if you're buying seconds, that's a different deal, because obviously you can't just return a guitar you bought as a second or a scratch and dent and have them send you another one. It might be a one-shot deal. So you have to keep that in mind too. Now, with most cases, even when you buy a scratch and dent, if it doesn't have the problem that they stated on the listing, and I've had guitar fetish issues, I've had rondo issues, I've bought seconds from all those companies, right? And they usually state on there what's wrong with the guitar, what the defect is. So if you get a guitar and it's supposed to have a finish blem, but when it arrives it has a finish blem and it's warped, you may not be able to get that guitar replaced because they only had one on offer. But it's false advertising. You were willing to accept the finish blem, whatever was stated on the ad, but the guitar's in worse condition. It's not as stated. It shows up with a lot more serious issues than what you bought it for. Therefore, you're entitled to return that guitar, maybe not for another one, but to get your money back. Some of these places are cute and they say stuff like no returns, but if you buy from a retail situation like Guitar Fetish, I had this case with a slick guitar I bought from them. I returned it and they tried to give me a hard time. I said no. I said I did not buy it in that condition, and it's not worth fixing now. I also had that problem with Hard Luck Kings, if you remember that video, and he gave me trouble about the return, and I said no. Just because I didn't buy your setup, it doesn't mean you get to send me a damaged guitar. That's ridiculous. And I persisted, and he eventually took that guitar back and credited me the restocking fee that he charged me because he sent me a damaged guitar, a warped guitar. So sometimes you have to be persistent and stand your ground. But if you've got something that isn't in the condition it's supposed to be, then you have every right to try and return it, whether it's for another one or just the money back to put somewhere else. Or maybe they'll just give you credit. You can spend it on something else. There are different permutations. However, don't settle for something that's beyond your repairability. Don't settle for something that's no longer worth what you paid, even if you can fix it. Right? A guitar with a top crack in it or a major ding is no longer worth the new price. So why should you take it? If the seller will work with you, and sometimes this works on eBay, you say, look, you didn't tell me about this issue, and they may come back and say, well, how about a partial refund to keep the guitar and save me the cost of having it shipped back here and then relisting it. And I've worked with people, and people have worked with me on that. You know, you might say, well, will you keep it for $50 less? And then it becomes worth it for you to try and fix or work with. So you get all these permutations around returns, but you should be aware of what your rights are when you buy the guitar, what the different markets entitle you to. Remember, buying used is entirely different from buying from a new retailer, whether it's online or in-person store. And lastly, you shouldn't take a hit for something that you bought. You either get what was stated, or you're entitled to, you know, some sort of return policy if you bought it from a new retailer. But my final point here, and I'll re-emphasize this, rule of thumb, if the guitar's warped, particularly side to side, if the neck is twisted, if the truss rod doesn't engage or work or fix the guitar, if the guitar has a crack or a crunch anywhere in the body that is not stated in the listing, send it back. Because I guarantee it, even if you can fix it, in most cases it's no longer going to be worth what you're hoping to get out of it. The only exception to that is if you're buying it just for yourself to play and you're okay with the damage. And I have had customers like that, and I've on occasion done that with like a cello or something. I was buying it for myself. It had a little issue that wasn't stated. Like, I'm not planning to resell this instrument. I can live with that. In that case, maybe you can make an exception. But if you are thinking of reselling, or you might not keep the guitar, no one can blame you for trying to return that guitar. Anyway, I've waffled on long enough, but I think it's an important detail. All right, folks. See you next time.